Hello everyone, this is Luxon, and today I'll be explaining special weapon similarities between Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. Now, every special weapon in Splatoon 2 is technically a new one compared to the first game, because for balancing purposes they just replaced all of them in between games. But a lot of them are very similar to ones in the first game, so if you had a playstyle built around using a specific special in the first game, this video is basically here to guide you as to which special to go for in Splatoon 2 if you want to keep that playstyle up. What I'll just be doing is go through all the special weapons in Splatoon 1 in alphabetical order, and then basically just say which special in Splatoon 2 is the most similar to it and why. So starting off, we've got the Bomb Rush, which is very obviously been completely replaced by the Bomb Launcher, since they're literally the same thing except you can hold down the R button to throw further in Splatoon 2 and you couldn't in Splatoon 1, and the fact that the types of Bomb Launcher are different than the types of Bomb Rush. Bomb Rush had Splat, Burst, Suction, and Seeker, and Bomb Launcher is Splat, Suction, and Auto Bombs. But other than that, they're pretty much the exact same thing. If anything, Bomb Launcher just gives you one more option to actually throw a bit further than you could with just a regular Bomb Rush, but other than that, you don't need to make any changes to your playstyle whatsoever to use this over Bomb Rush. Next up is the Bubbler, which was replaced with Ink Armor. This is one of the few that you can definitely tell was a direct replacement, because a lot of the weapons that had Bubbler as a special in the first game were now just given Ink Armor, and they do serve the same purpose. It's a defense boost, effectively, that can be spread around to your teammates. If anything, Ink Armor's spreading to your teammates thing is even better than the Bubbler's was, although it's not invincibility for a few seconds, it's just basically additional HP for a few seconds. Other than that, again, you can play them very similarly. It's not an invincibility special, however, which is technically a nerf. But if you knew how to play Bubble, if you knew your timing for the Bubble specifically, if you were good at timing when to use Bubbler and when not to, you'd probably be pretty good at timing Ink Armor right off the bat, too. After that, we have the Echo Locator, which this is probably the biggest stretch in terms of finding a similarity, but I'm going to tie this to the Tenta Missiles. If only for the fact that when you're using and aiming the Tenta Missiles, you can see exactly where everyone on the other team is at a time. Echo Locator was basically giving the other team point sensors at once, while Tenta Missiles is just you seeing them, but if you're talking competitive scenario, you're going to be calling out where everyone is anyway, and a lot of people use Tenta Missiles just to get a read on where everyone on the other team is rather than for the actual kill power. They just use it to find where people are and then flush them out of hiding, or something like that. So in practice, in a high-level competitive setting, Tenta Missiles are a lot closer to Echo Locator than you'd think, but if you're going more casual or solo play, the similarities might be a little less useful for you. After that is the Ink Strike, which is another pretty obvious one because it had the same thing that happened with Bubble to Ink Armor, where a lot of weapons that had Ink Strike in the first game were given Ink Storm in the second. If you think about it, the Ink Storm is basically an Ink Strike that'll move as you go along and covers less turf per second than the Ink Strike did. It's on the Splattershot Pro, that's like that was the de facto Ink Strike weapon in the first game. And honestly, there is a bit of a playstyle change between Ink Strike and Ink Storm, obviously, because you can't just say, boop, press the thing on the gamepad, and hey, this is where your Ink Storm's gonna go. You have to actually physically go somewhere where you can line up and then throw it. So there is that change. But if your playstyle is revolving around a special where you can ink a large circular area of turf at once, then you should still go with weapons that have Ink Storm. After Ink Strike comes Inkzooka, and this is another fairly obvious one. There's a bit of a pattern here, as you can see. Inkzooka was basically turned into Inkjet. They're both extremely long-range projectile weapons that have a long delay between firing and have a bit of a learning curve to their aim, except Inkjet's more versatile because obviously there's the flying thing, there's the pressing B to boost your jump height, and there's the fact that it's basically a blaster shot, so you can get indirect hits to do chip damage as well as the insta-kill shot. There is, again, a bit of a learning curve between aiming with Inkzooka and aiming with Inkjet, but it serves effectively the same purpose in the second game. It's on Tenatech. Tenatech was the Inkzooka weapon in the first game. There's a pattern going on now. Next up is the Killer Whale, which was replaced with the Stingray. This one is extra obvious because they use the same sound effect now with the 1.3.0 version of the Stingray that increases in hitbox radius if you hold it for long enough. They're both somewhat aimable, maneuverable, infinite range, steady hitboxes that do small amounts of damage but will kill if someone's trapped in them for longer. It's just a trade-off in between games where you replace the unaimable, wider cone of the Killer Whale with the more aimable but narrower cone of the Stingray, except again that can widen to, I'm not perfect with the estimation, but maybe somewhere between half and 2/3 the radius of a Killer Whale if you hold it for long enough. Plus you can still swim around with it. So in all, it's a lot better in competitive specifically because you can do Ghostbusters cross the stream things on people. I'm not going to say it's objectively better than the Killer Whale. It's better in a team situation, yes, and there are a lot more things you can do with it, as well as the fact that, again, this is more a video about the transition between games, so you're going to be pretty good. Just think of a Killer Whale that you can actually aim. And for the last Splatoon 1 special weapon, we have the Kraken. Yeah, I didn't realize until I started making this video that there are no special weapons in Splatoon 1 that start with a letter after K in the alphabet, in English at least. It's kind of interesting. But the Kraken's equivalent in Splatoon 2 is the Baller. Now, the Baller is obviously not an invincibility special, nothing in Splatoon 2 is, but they both serve the same purpose of turning you into something where you can move quickly in a line that paints a narrow trail of ink behind you, and you also have one devastating attack that you can use with it too. I'm not really going to say much about playstyle changes, because the Kraken was one of the best specials in the first game, and as of patch 1.3.0, the Baller is the best special in the second game. I think you can kind of figure out how to use this one on your own. If you've played both games, you might have noticed that Splatoon 2 does have more specials than Splatoon 1, even counting each bomb rush and bomb launcher as a separate special. So there are actually 2 Splatoon 2 specials that don't have really any equivalent in the first game. First of these is the Splashdown, which is the closest thing to a panic button special you can get in Splatoon 2, honestly, although there's still plenty of times you can be hurt during it. It's also good for painting stuff, you can surprise people when you're jumping in with a super jump, all that good stuff. It's not difficult to pick up and use, it's just not very similar to anything from the first game in terms of use. You could sort of argue that it's also like Inkstrike in that you're the Inkstrike. It does paint less than Inkstrike or Inkstorm does, but it's sort of the same effect. And you can do it coming in on a super jump, so you can sort of aim it using the map. Or you could sort of say it's like Bubbler and Kraken, because of the invincibility frames at the top of the jump, but I personally think it's its own thing. And the second one of these new quote-unquote specials is the Bubble Blower, which it's again an inking / killing thing, so you could say it's another evolution of the Ink Strike where you have like 3 mini Ink Strikes that you have to set off separately or something like that. You could sort of argue that, and you could really, in theory, this is a strategy I've wanted to try out, have someone with Object Shredder use an Inkstorm weapon, and then someone with a bunch of special power-up use Bubble Blower, and then put an Inkstorm over the bubbles to pop them. That's probably going to be like more than the impact of an Ink Strike and all at once. That's cool. That's the closest to an actual Ink Strike you're going to get probably, but again, Bubble Blower has the 3 bubbles that you have to actually pop them, that they can be destroyed by the enemy before they're popped. That's not something present in anything in the first game, so I'm not really confident in saying that it's the equivalent to any of the first game special weapons. That's it for this video, but as always, you should probably subscribe if you like Splatoon 2 guides, because they're coming out weekly now. I'm also Let's Playing Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I've also got a Twitter and a Twitch, those are going to be in the description, so do something with that too. But until next week, where I'm going to be making a guide as to how to pick your control scheme in Splatoon 2, this is Luxon, signing off.